in the heart of a parched desert town where tumbleweeds rolled across cracked earth and secrets were whispered behind saloon doors, one quiet horseman's act of compassion changed everything. When John Merrick spotted a pregnant woman collapsing by the riverbank, he could have turned away like so many others. Instead, with just the clothes on his back and the few coins in his pocket, he cradled her in his arms. What happened next was nothing short of extraordinary. Right there on the muddy shore, John made a choice that rattled the frontier. He married her on the spot to save her honor. The year was 1882, and a small settlement named Willow Bend clung to the banks of the Rio Conchos near the southwestern frontier of Texas. It wasn't much of a town, just a dusty main street with a half-dozen wooden structures, a saloon, a general store, a smithy, and the modest office of the local sheriff, Vern Taggart. A tiny church sat at the far end, only used for Sunday worship and weddings, when folks could round up a preacher passing through. The rest of Willow Bend was little more than scattered ranches and farmland edging the river. John Merrick arrived in town just after dawn. The sun was a burning disk climbing over the horizon, turning the world into a palette of copper and gold. He was a man of few words and even fewer expressions. Tall, lean, dressed in trail-worn denim and a dusty duster coat. He was the type folks either ignored or eyed suspiciously, depending on their temperament. His brown mare, Daisy, was as subdued as he was a dependable horse that rarely spooked and never hurried without cause. Little did John know that the moment his boots hit the dusty road of Willow Bend, fate was already guiding him toward a life-altering discovery. He had come seeking a quiet place to earn a little money, breaking horses or working cattle maybe drift on after he'd saved enough coin. But destiny had other plans. After stabling Daisy and inquiring about odd jobs around town, John decided to inspect the river on the outskirts, hoping to catch some fish for his supper. As he followed the gentle slope down to the water, he noticed a disturbance. A woman's bonnet lay trampled in the mud. A basket of scattered belongings was half submerged, its contents drifting aimlessly. A few more steps revealed the pregnant woman lying motionless on the sandy bank. Her cheeks were ghostly pale, and the tattered hem of her calico dress was stained with mud. Fear struck John's heart. She looked far gone in pregnancy, and the punishing heat of the day made fainting a genuine danger. He moved quickly, dropping to his knees at her side. "Ma'am," he called, his voice hoarse from surprise and concern. Carefully, he tilted her face toward him. She was barely conscious, lips dry and cracked, her breaths coming in ragged rasps. Her auburn hair clung to her forehead in sweaty tendrils. With no time to run for help, John gathered her into his arms. The water was close, so he dipped his bandana in the cool river, pressing it gently to her forehead. For a long moment, he thought she might not rouse, but eventually her eyelids fluttered. Where am I?" she mumbled, her voice trembling. "Willow Bend." John answered softly, and then added, "I'm John Merrick. Can you speak your name?" She stirred confusion, clouding her hazel eyes. "Anna. My name is Anna." John offered her another cloth soaked in river water, which she gratefully took to her lips. "I found you lying here. Are you alone?" A shadow of fear flickered across Anna's face. She tried to push herself up, wincing when her back protested. Gently, John helped her. Yes, I was traveling," she said, faltering. "Needed help." John didn't press further. He could see this wasn't the time to pry. Instead, he focused on keeping her calm. Let's get you into some shade." Together they trudged up the slope. A large mesquite tree offered a patch of mercy from the sun. He settled her there, rummaging through his saddlebags for a canteen. He emptied the last of his water into a tin cup, handing it to Anna. "Thank you," she whispered before sipping slowly. A few minutes of rest under the mesquite revived her a bit. She explained she was several months pregnant, likely 7 or so by the look of her, and had walked miles trying to find a place of refuge. She didn't say much more. John saw the fear in her face, recognized the private torment behind her eyes. It was something he'd seen before in the broken souls who drifted across the frontier, carrying secrets they couldn't share. That day he thought only of helping this woman survive. He had no notion that within hours their names would be forever bound in matrimony. Anna could barely walk without leaning against John's arm. Step by step they made their way into Willow Bend. It was the kind of town that noticed strangers, but few men or women came forth to help, unless properly introduced. The only person they encountered on the street was Old Man Greeley, the local blacksmith, who stared curiously as they passed. "Should we go to the sheriff's?" John asked. Anna's answer was immediate. "No." She flinched at the sharpness of her own voice. Softening, she continued. "No, please. I just need a place to rest to get my strength back." John looked at her, reading the panic in her expression. Something in her past, maybe someone, terrified her. He decided not to argue. "I got a few coins to my name," he offered. "I can pay for a room at the boarding house if they'll have us." A moment later, they found themselves at the door of Miss Prudence Fletcher's boarding house, a modest 2-story structure with peeling white paint. John knocked, and the landlady, a woman in her 50s with a stern face, peeked out. As Fletcher's disapproval was immediate, as her gaze flicked from John to the heavily pregnant Anna. "Good morning," she said, voice tight. "We don't get many boarders this time of year." John cleared his throat. "I'd like a room for this young lady. She's in need of rest and a safe place for a while. I'll cover her cost as best I can." Ms. Fletcher sniffed, clearly suspicious. "And what's your relation?" Anna tensed beside him, eyes downcast. John felt her tremble. It dawned on him that a single pregnant woman might not be welcomed with open arms in a small, gossiping frontier town. She had no ring on her finger, no trunk of belongings. In the eyes of many that spelled scandal. Before John could speak, Ms. Fletcher continued. "No offense, sir, but this is a Christian house, and I can't have any unseemly business." Anna's cheeks went crimson. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. John held Miss Fletcher's steely gaze. He understood more than he cared to, that a woman in Anna's condition was an outcast in some places. With the sun beating down and Anna shaking, he acted on the only honorable course he could see. "Anna's my fiancée." He lied smoothly, the words surprising even him. "We've been separated, but I found her again on the road. I need to make sure she's taken care of." For a second, Miss Fletcher's hard expression softened, if only a little. "Well," she said, "I guess I can make an exception, but I'll need payment up front, and you'll abide by the rules of this house." John nodded. Anna said nothing, just allowed him to lead her inside. The interior was cramped but clean. A single hallway led to 3 bedrooms, each with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a tiny window. Miss Fletcher gave them the farthest room. Inside, Anna sank onto the edge of the bed, relief evident in her face. John put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You rest," he said. "I'll fetch you some food and water." Anna managed a weak smile. "Thank you." she murmured. I don't know how to repay you. John shrugged as though it was nothing. Don't worry about me. Just rest. But even as he left, he felt the weight of his lie. By calling her his fiancée, he'd placed them both in a precarious position. Small-town rumors spread faster than wildfire. Before long, everyone would be expecting a wedding. John made his way to the general store, run by a kindly couple named Horace and Martha Appleton. Martha was behind the counter when John walked in. She offered a bright smile that quickly faded upon noticing his anxious expression. "Morning, sir," Martha greeted. "You new in town." John bought some bread, dried meat, a jar of pickles, and a canteen refill. As he counted out coins, the question he dreaded arrived right on time. "So you come with family? Wife?" John gave a curt nod. "She's at the boarding house, resting. We, hope to be married soon." Martha. Appleton's eyes gleamed with interest, her curiosity undeniably piqued. "How wonderful. You'll talk to Preacher Jacobs. I suppose he's due in town soon." "Preacher Jacobs," John repeated. Martha nodded. "He travels between small towns, makes it to Willow Bend every few weeks. Matter of fact, rumor says he's passing through this weekend." Her smile turned motherly. "If you're in a hurry to tie the knot, that's your man." John swallowed hard. A sudden, uninvited wave of panic washed over him. He'd woven a cover story for Anna's benefit, for her to have a roof over her head. But in a place like Willow Bend, a fiancé wasn't simply a label one tossed around lightly. Folks would expect a wedding, and soon. After purchasing the food, John headed back. Every step felt heavier than the last. As he entered the boarding house, Ms. Fletcher cornered him in the narrow hallway. She leaned in her eyes, flicking upward toward the second floor. "Your fiancé's awake," she said softly. Looked mighty distressed. "Perhaps you should speak with her." John found Anna propped against a pillow, hands protectively around her rounded belly. She looked up with relief when he came in. "How are you feeling?" he asked, sitting on a rickety chair by the bed. "Better," she replied, then lowered her gaze. "John, about what you told the landlady." He exhaled. "I know. I said you're my fiancé. It was the only way to get a room in this place." Anna flushed. "That was kind of you. I didn't have the strength to speak up." He shifted uncomfortably. "We might need to keep that story up. Folks in Willow Bend might not take kindly to a single woman in your condition." Tears glistened in her eyes. Her voice trembled. "I wish it were different. I left home because I had nowhere else to go." John didn't press for details, sensing she wasn't ready. Instead, he handed her the bag of groceries and water. She took a bite of bread, chewing slowly, each morsel likely tasting like salvation. Then she spoke quietly, a confession unraveling in fragments. "My father, Gerald Harrow, is a rancher up near Abilene. Strict as an iron rod. When he found out I was expecting, he demanded I give the child up. Said it would taint the family name." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "He threatened to send me away to a cousin in St. Louis, said I'd never see home again. So I ran." John's jaw tightened. He'd known men like that, unfeeling and quick to judge. "And the baby's father?" he asked gently. She swallowed her throat tight. "I was engaged. His name is Paul Gresham. But something happened, a misunderstanding. He left town abruptly." She closed her eyes as if shutting out a painful memory. "I found out I was pregnant after he'd gone. My father hated him, and hated me for carrying Paul's child. I have no idea where Paul is or why he left without a word." The tragedy sank into John's heart. Anna was cast out alone and terrified. The frontier was harsh enough for a seasoned cowhand. For a young pregnant woman, it was near impossible. He placed a calming hand on hers. "You're safe here for now. I'll do what I can." In that moment, a finality settled between them. Whether they wanted it or not, the whole town soon would regard them as a couple on the brink of matrimony. And with Preacher Jacobs arriving soon, the charade might turn all too real faster than either expected. 2 days passed in a whirlwind of rumors. Word spread that John Merrick had brought a pregnant fiancée into Miss Fletcher's boarding house. Locals eyed John with undisguised curiosity. True to Martha Appleton's prediction, Preacher Jacobs arrived late in the afternoon on a dusty stagecoach. The traveling pastor was an older man with a long grey beard and a kindly face. He appeared at Miss Fletcher's parlour the next morning, hat in hand, a hopeful glint in his eyes that some new wedding might grace his ledger. Miss Fletcher wasted no time in calling John and Anna downstairs. They found the preacher in the small front room, sipping tea from a chipped porcelain cup. Miss Fletcher hovered in the corner, a self-appointed chaperone. John Anna Preacher Jacobs greeted them with enthusiasm. "I hear there's cause for celebration." When might the happy day be? John and Anna exchanged uneasy glances. Anna's shoulders tensed. John cleared his throat. Preacher. We haven't set a date yet." The older man laughed warmly. "No time like the present, my boy." He sized up Anna's advanced pregnancy, his gaze radiating concern and fatherly kindness. "A wedding in God's eyes is always the surest way to bring a child into the world. And Miss Fletcher says you're in need of a quick ceremony." Anna's face paled, but she nodded almost imperceptibly. She knew they had few options. If the boarding house discovered the truth, she could be thrown out. If townsfolk realized their relationship was a facade, the gossip might run them both out of Willow Bend. John inhaled, turning to Anna. He lowered his voice. "We can leave," he whispered. "Find somewhere else. But traveling like that would be hard on you." She glanced at her belly. The baby was due in just a couple of months, maybe sooner. Her legs were too weak for long journeys. There were no stagecoaches venturing safely beyond Willow Bend for at least another week, maybe more. Finally, she squared her shoulders, forcing a fragile but determined smile. "Reverend Jacobs," she said softly, "we would be honored if you could marry us." It was done. The vow was sealed before it was even spoken. They gathered that very afternoon in the dusty main street of Willow Bend, just outside the tiny church that the locals used for worship whenever a traveling preacher was in town. A few bystanders, Martha and Horace Appleton, Old Man Greeley, Miss Fletcher, came to witness. The air was sweltering, the sun blazing overhead. Even the tumbleweeds seemed to pause, intrigued by the unlikely union. Anna wore a simple faded blue dress that Miss Fletcher had lent her. She clutched a small bouquet of wildflowers Martha Appleton had gathered from the riverbank. John stood beside her in his best shirt, looking more nervous than any bridegroom had a right to be. Preacher Jacobs cleared his throat. "Friends, we gather here to join John Merrick and Anna Harrow in holy matrimony." As the ceremony began, John felt the weight of the moment pressing on his chest. He stole a glance at Anna. Her eyes sparkled with tears. Whether from relief, fear, or a flicker of hope, he wasn't certain. "Do you, John Merrick, take Anna Harrow to be your lawfully wedded wife?" John heard his own voice answer. I do. And do you? Anna Harrow, take John Merrick as your lawfully wedded husband? Anna's lips trembled, her voice barely above a whisper. I do. With those words and a brief prayer, Preacher Jacobs declared them man and wife. Fletcher gave a polite clap, while Martha Appleton dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Horace grinned widely. John bent down, brushing a soft kiss across Anna's brow. The crowd, small as it was, cheered in quiet approval. On that scorching afternoon, with dust swirling around them, John Merrick and Anna Harrow became a family by necessity. And perhaps something deeper. But the question lingered in John's mind like a distant thundercloud. What would happen if the truth came out? For now, though they had shelter a modicum of respect and enough compassion from the town to survive. Married life in Willow Bend began quietly. John continued to look for work, picking up tasks at the Appletons' general store, helping Old Man Greeley with horseshoes and wagon repairs, and occasionally riding out to local ranches in search of odd jobs. Anna stayed at the boarding house, resting under Miss Fletcher's watchful eye. The wedding had silenced the most malicious gossip for the time being. But small towns thrive on speculation, and a hush fell whenever John or Anna entered the saloon or strolled the streets. The question on everyone's lips: where had Anna come from, and why had John been so secretive? There was one man in Willow Bend who seemed determined to learn the answers. Sheriff Vern Taggart was a tall, barrel-chested fellow, once rumored to be an associate of the famed lawman Wyatt Earp during his Tombstone days, though Taggart seldom talked about it. He had a knack for sniffing out trouble, and Anna's sudden appearance looked to him like trouble indeed. One morning, John was stocking barrels of flour at the Appleton store when Sheriff Taggart ambled in. He removed his hat, dusted it off, then strolled up to the counter. Horace Appleton greeted him with a nod. John felt the sheriff's eyes on him. He set down the flour bag, turned around, and met Taggart's gaze. Merrick the sheriff said in a measured tone, "Heard you got hitched." John nodded curtly. Taggart rubbed at his trimmed moustache. "You and the missus got plans gonna settle down here in Willow Bend?" John tried to keep his voice calm. "We'll stay as long as we're welcome." The sheriff crossed his arms, leaning against the counter. "This town's always open to honest folk. But if there's anything you're keeping from me, better let me know now." Horace Appleton glanced nervously between the two men, sensing tension. John forced a polite smile. "I got nothing to hide, Sheriff." Taggart studied him for a long beat. "I'm sure you don't," he finally said, then straightened up. "Well, I'd best be on my way." Once he was gone, Horace exhaled. "You'll want to steer clear of Vern Taggart, friend. He's a hard man when it comes to upholding the law. If he suspects any wrongdoing, he'll dig until he finds something." John felt a chill. He cast a silent prayer that Anna's story wouldn't provoke the sheriff's suspicion. That evening, as the sun set behind the jagged hills, John returned to the boarding house to check on Anna. He found her in the parlor, knitting tiny baby socks. She looked more at ease than he'd seen her before, yet still plagued by an undercurrent of worry. "Any pain?" he asked softly, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. She shook her head. "Just tired." They spoke of the day John's work, the folks he met. Gradually the conversation drifted to her father, Gerald Harrow. Anna's hands trembled around her knitting needles. "I'm scared," she admitted. "He's a powerful man. If he learns where I am..." John frowned. "He'd try to take you back." Her eyes shone with tears. He might. Or he might do worse. Father always said a woman's reputation is everything. If it's ruined, he'd do anything to keep it quiet, even if it meant sending me away for good. John could only shake his head. "We'll handle it," he promised, though he wasn't sure how. Outside the window, the sky turned from orange to indigo. A hush fell across Willow Bend. The only sound was the distant bray of a mule and the far-off rustle of a breeze through the cottonwoods near the river. Anna set aside her knitting. "Why did you do it?" she asked suddenly, turning to John. "Marry me, like that, I mean. You could have just left me there." John paused, remembering the sight of her frail body by the riverbank. "I couldn't," he said, finally. "Maybe I've seen too many people turn their backs on someone in need. I ain't a hero. I just couldn't watch a woman suffer like that." A tear slipped down Anna's cheek. She reached for his hand, her touch tentative but warm. In that small, dimly lit parlor, they held each other's gaze longer than ever before, as though forging an unspoken pact. But outside storms were gathering, some swirling from Anna's past, others from the prying eyes of the sheriff, and still more from the harsh realities of life on the frontier. Soon enough, their fragile peace would be tested. A week passed, and Anna's health improved. She could walk short distances, and her appetite returned. John spent most days working small jobs around Willow Bend, determined to save money for the child's arrival. It was on a blazing afternoon, while John was helping Old Man Greeley at the smithy, that a stranger rode into town. The man wore a black frock coat and a wide-brimmed hat. He carried himself with an air of authority, scanning the street with cold, assessing eyes. He hitched his horse outside the saloon and entered with purpose, ignoring the curious stares of the patrons. A hush fell as he approached the bar. The barkeep, Ray Sullivan, raised a bushy eyebrow. "Help you, mister?" Ray asked. The stranger placed a crisp, folded notice on the bar. Ray gave it a perplexed look. "Looking for a woman," the newcomer said, his voice low. "Name's Anna Harrow." Ray's face paled. The saloon had its share of travelers, but rarely anyone so direct and official-looking. "Never heard of her," Ray lied, trying to protect one of their own. The man's piercing gaze swept over the handful of customers, lingering on each face in turn. Finally, he spoke again. "I'm Winston Crane, lawyer representing Gerald Harrow of Abilene. I have reason to believe Anna Harrow is in Willow Bend. Her father wants her returned home." The tension in the saloon thickened. Ray forced a shrug. "Can't say I know the lady." Crane's lip curled. "Mr. Harrow is offering a reward for information. A substantial sum." He pulled out a money pouch, letting the coins jingle. "If you see or hear anything, let me know at once. I'll be staying at the hotel in Redwood Springs, a few miles east of here." With that, Winston Crane turned on his heel and strode out. Every head in the saloon turned to watch him go. A collective exhale followed his departure. Word traveled at lightning speed in Willow Bend. It reached the Appletons' store, and soon Horace was sprinting to the smithy, breathless to warn John. John put down the hammer heart pounding. Without hesitation, he rushed to the boarding house to find Anna. She was upstairs, sewing in the modest bedroom. The moment he saw her, John's face betrayed the urgency. "Anna." "We have trouble," he said, closing the door behind him. Her needle froze above the cloth. "My father." John nodded grimly. "He sent a lawyer, Winston Crane, to look for you. He's offering a reward. Right now the barkeep's playing dumb. But I don't know how long folks will keep quiet." Tears brimmed in Anna's eyes. Her voice quivered. "What can we do? If he finds me, he'll force me to go back." "I can't. John, I can't go back there." John exhaled, raking a hand through his hair. "We might need to leave Willow Bend, go somewhere safe. But we can't travel too far, not with you so close to giving birth." A knock on the door startled them. Fletcher's voice called softly, "Anna John." "May I come in?" They opened the door to find Miss Fletcher looking anxious but resolute. "I heard about the lawyer in town. Folks are already whispering. I want you to know I won't say a word. You have a place here." Anna clutched Miss Fletcher's hands, tears of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you." Miss Fletcher nodded. "You've been good tenants, and I can't bear to see you uprooted. Not in your condition, dear." She cast a meaningful glance at Anna's belly. "But be careful. Sooner or later that man might come knocking." John and Anna exchanged worried looks. "We'll be on our guard," John promised. That night, John and Anna sat on the small porch behind the boarding house, seeking a moment's peace. The stars shimmered in a cloudless sky, unencumbered by city lights or the chaos swirling around them. Anna's hand found John's. "You don't deserve this mess," she said softly. "You've done so much for me, already." He squeezed her fingers gently, staring out at the distant mountains. "I made my choice," he replied. "I'll stand by it." Slowly, she turned her gaze to him, searching his face. "Why are you so willing to risk everything for someone you barely know?" John paused, the memories of his own past flickering behind his eyes. His voice was quiet when he spoke. "Some time ago I was married. We lived in a small ranching community, not too different from Willow Bend. But there was an accident, my wife. She didn't make it." His voice caught for a moment. "She was with child. I was too late to save her." Anna's eyes filled with sympathy. "Oh, John, I'm so sorry." He swallowed hard. "After that, I drifted. Couldn't bear to settle down anywhere. Figured I was cursed. But when I saw you by that river, saw how helpless you were, I remembered my wife in her final moments. I vowed I wouldn't let another woman suffer alone." Tears traced silent paths down Anna's cheeks. She reached up, brushing the moisture from John's face, unaware he too had shed a tear. In the hush of the warm night, with the stars bearing witness, a fragile closeness grew between them. They had started as strangers bound by circumstance. Now understanding and compassion tethered them together with threads more delicate but stronger than either had realized. A few days passed, each one a test of nerves. Anna rarely left the boarding house, fearing Winston Crane might appear. She busied herself with preparing for the baby sewing, little garments, knitting blankets, while Miss Fletcher offered moral support. John, meanwhile, tried to keep a low profile, working in the outskirts of town. He avoided the saloon or any place Crane might show up. Yet tension lay thick in the air, as if a storm were on the horizon. The storm arrived one afternoon when Miss Fletcher was out shopping for supplies, leaving Anna alone in the boarding house. John had gone to the smithy, planning to return soon. The front door rattled. Anna froze, her heart pounding. A second knock sounded louder and more insistent. Hesitantly, she made her way to the door. "Who is it?" she called, attempting to steady her voice. "Winston Crane," came the reply. "Open up, please." Her palms felt clammy. She swallowed, considering staying silent. But Crane knew someone was inside the door's old hinges had squeaked. Pressing a hand to her belly, Anna cracked open the door. Winston Crane stood on the stoop, dust coating his boots. He removed his hat, revealing dark, thinning hair. His expression was carefully schooled professional, but with a predatory glint in his eye. "Anna Harrow," he said by way of greeting. "I believe you know your father, Gerald Harrow. He's been desperately searching for you." She tried to lift her chin in defiance, but her voice trembled. I don't wish to speak with you." Crane gave a tight smile. "Your father is prepared to forgive the unfortunate situation. He only wants to ensure you are cared for. He has the means to see that your child is raised properly." Anna's fear warred with anger. "I don't need him," she whispered. "He only wants to hide me away." Crane sighed as though speaking to a willful child. "Your father can be stern, but you know how society frowns upon—" His gaze flicked to her belly. "Children born out of wedlock." Her voice rose. "I am not out of wedlock. I'm married now to John Merrick." For the first time, Crane's carefully arranged mask cracked, revealing genuine surprise. "Married," he repeated. "Yes," Anna said. "So you can tell my father I'm no longer his concern." "Winston." Crane's eyes narrowed. "Your father won't be pleased. He'll want to verify this marriage. And if you've married a scoundrel, someone with no means to support you, he'll do everything in his power to undo this arrangement." Anna bristled, though her fear was evident in her trembling hands. "It's legal. The preacher was here. The whole town witnessed it." A calculating look crossed Crane's face. "Be that as it may, your father has resources. If this man you married can't provide a stable home, or if your union is in any way fraudulent—" He let the implication hang in the air. Anna's heart thundered. She forced herself not to crumble under the lawyer's unyielding gaze. "You have your answer. Please leave." Crane replaced his hat, giving a curt bow. "Very well, but I'll remain in the area for a time. Should you reconsider or come to your senses, you know where to find me." The door shut with a slam, and Anna staggered backward, tears burning in her eyes. She sank into a chair, hands cradling her belly. A wave of dread seized her. Even though they'd married, her father had powerful ways of meddling in her life. When John returned and found her in distress, the story spilled from her trembling lips. He wrapped his arms around her gently, rubbing her back as she sobbed. "We'll figure something out," he murmured, though worry knotted in his stomach. He knew Winston Crane's type, cunning, relentless, and well-funded by a vindictive father. Outside, the scorching afternoon sun cast long shadows across Willow Bend. Inside, the new Mr. and Mrs. Merrick grappled with the reality that their peaceful refuge was about to be shattered. A day later, as John was hauling water barrels behind the smithy, Sheriff Vern Taggart caught up with him. The sheriff removed his hat, wiping sweat from his brow. "Got a minute, Merrick?" John set down the barrel. "Sure." Taggart looked uneasy, as if weighed down by conflicting loyalties. "Winston Crane came to see me," he said. "Says Anna's father wants her returned to Abilene. Crane's making a fuss about your marriage, asking if it's real, if it was done just to hide her away." John's jaw tightened. "It's real." Taggart nodded. "Reverend Jacobs is a fine man. If he married you, that's good enough for me. But Crane says the father might press charges if he believes Anna was coerced or manipulated." A flash of anger lit John's eyes. "Coerced? She's not a prisoner. I found her fainting by the river, for God's sake." The sheriff sighed. "Easy, Merrick. I'm just telling you what Crane is implying. The man's threatening to get the circuit judge involved. We have Judge Roy Bean out west, but he's rumored to be away on business. If Crane manages to find some territory judge who's more, shall we say, persuadable, it could cause you a world of trouble." John felt his temper surge, but he reined it in. "What do you want from me, Sheriff? I want peace in Willow Bend," Taggart said plainly. "I don't like outsiders stirring up trouble. Crane's hinting at bribing half the town to turn you in. As long as you and Anna stand your ground, I'll do what I can to keep the peace. But if that judge shows up with a warrant—" He trailed off, letting the possibility speak for itself. John gazed at the horizon, feeling cornered. Finally, he met Taggart's eyes. "I appreciate what you're saying, Sheriff, but I won't let them take my wife." Taggart nodded slowly. "Just be prepared. Harrow's a wealthy man." With that, the sheriff left, leaving John alone to ponder the precarious tightrope he and Anna were walking. That evening, as dusk fell over Willow Bend, Winston Crane returned this time with 2 hired guns at his side. He marched straight to the boarding house with an air of finality. John, aware of Crane's approach, met him outside on the porch. "Evening, Merrick," Crane said, tipping his hat sarcastically. "I've grown tired of polite requests. I must see Anna." John's fists clenched at his sides. "You got your answer yesterday." Crane gestured at the 2 tough-looking men flanking him. "You think you can keep a man from his daughter's rightful caretaker. If you value your safety, you'll step aside." Inside, Anna peered through the window. Fear etched in her features. Miss Fletcher stood by her side, protective as a mother hen. John swallowed, refusing to budge. The porch lamp cast flickering shadows across his resolute face. "This is between me and my wife. You want me, I'm right here. But you leave Anna alone." Crane's gaze turned icy. "Have it your way." He gave a nod to his hired guns. One of them reached for his revolver, but a shout rang out from across the street. "Hold it!" Sheriff Taggart strode over, hand on his own weapon. "I see any of you try to draw, you'll be answering to me." Crane smoothed his coat, trying to appear unruffled. "Sheriff, I have every right to bring Anna Harrow back to her father. She's been misled, forced into a sham marriage." Taggart glowered. "As far as I know, she took those vows willingly in front of Preacher Jacobs. And unless you have a court order from a recognized judge, you're meddling in affairs that ain't your concern." Crane's lips tightened. "I'll get that court order, Sheriff. You can be sure of it." Taggart gave a dismissive wave of his hand. "Until then, get your men off this property. You so much as threaten a hair on anyone's head in my town, you'll cool your heels in a cell." With an angry huff, Crane spun on his heels, motioning for his thugs to follow. But he paused on the edge of the porch and cast a chilling glare at John. "This isn't over. Anna Harrow will be back with her father one way or another." John said nothing, returning Crane's glare, with steel in his eyes. Only when the lawyer and his men had mounted their horses and disappeared into the twilight did John release a shuddering breath. Taggart approached, speaking quietly. "He'll be back, Merrick. Mark my words." John nodded. "I know." Inside, Ms. Fletcher guided Anna away from the window. The poor woman was trembling, tears threatening to spill. John hurried in and placed a reassuring arm around her shoulders. "I'm sorry," she whimpered, leaning into him. "I didn't mean for you to be in this danger." John stroked her hair gently. "Hush now. We'll face it together. We're a family, remember." Despite the looming threat of Winston Crane and the possibility of a forced legal confrontation, life pressed on. The baby inside Anna wasn't interested in waiting for court rulings or paternal demands. It was determined to arrive in its own time. Late one night, about 2 weeks after Crane's threats, Anna woke with a start. Pain lanced through her body. She tried to sit up, but the surge of labor forced a gasp from her lips. John, who had taken to sleeping in a chair beside her bed, jumped awake. "Anna?" he asked, voice thick with sleep. She clutched his hand. "It's time, John. The baby's coming." Ms. Fletcher rushed in, having heard the commotion. "We'll need the doctor," she said firmly. Willow Bend's only doctor. Harold Kimball was a no-nonsense man in his 60s, with a constant frown and a permanent stoop. John ran to fetch him, while Ms. Fletcher tended to Anna. The entire boarding house buzzed with urgency. By the time John returned with Dr. Kimball in tow, Anna was in the throes of painful contractions. The doctor quickly took charge, barking orders for hot water, clean towels, and whatever meager supplies could be found. Ms. Fletcher cleared everyone else out, leaving only the doctor, Anna, and herself in the room. Outside the door, John paced anxiously. Each muffled cry from Anna tore at his heart. Time seemed to crawl. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he clenched and unclenched his fists, muttering prayers he hadn't uttered in years. Memories of his first wife's tragic death haunted him, fueling his terror. After hours that felt like days, a new sound pierced the night, the wail of a newborn. John's knees buckled with relief. Ms. Fletcher opened the door, tears of joy in her eyes. "It's a boy," she announced, voice trembling. "And Anna's... she's all right. A little weak, but she'll be fine." John stumbled in, half-dazed. The lamp's soft glow illuminated Anna, drenched in sweat hair plastered to her face. In her arms lay a tiny, squirming bundle, ruddy-cheeked, fragile and perfect. Dr. Kimball stood by, checking Anna's pulse. "She'll need rest and good care," he said gruffly, but not without warmth. "You'll have to keep any stress away from her." John sank onto the bed, carefully cradling Anna's free hand. "Thank you," he whispered to the doctor, choking on emotion. Then his eyes drifted to the newborn, who was whimpering softly. A gentle awe stole over him. Anna, her exhaustion palpable, managed a radiant smile. "We did it," she breathed. John gently placed a hand on the baby's head, feeling the soft tufts of dark hair. An overwhelming sense of protectiveness welled up inside him. Along with a fierce determination, he would protect Anna and this child from any threat, father lawyer, or the frontier itself. For the next several days, Anna and her son remained mostly confined to the boarding house, recovering from the ordeal. Ms. Fletcher turned the entire second floor into a makeshift nursery. The townsfolk, moved by the drama, and John's quiet devotion, began offering small tokens of goodwill. Extra blankets, fresh milk, a wooden cradle crafted by Old Man Greeley. Even Sheriff Taggart thawed toward the couple dropping by to check on mother and child, bringing word that Winston Crane had been spotted in Redwood Springs, likely scheming with a local judge. That rumor was confirmed one afternoon when the sheriff came knocking, tension darkening his face. "I just heard Crane's obtained a writ," Taggart announced to John. "He claims the marriage is fraudulent. The judge might sign an order to bring Anna back to Abilene." Anna, holding her baby, paled. "What can we do?" John's eyes flicked to the sleeping infant. "We won't let them take you," he promised. Sure enough, the showdown came sooner than expected. Crane returned with a court official from Redwood Springs, a man named Judge Halverson, who was known to handle legal matters with a heavy hand and an open palm for bribes. They confronted John on the street, while Anna remained hidden inside. Judge Halverson waved a paper in the air. By the authority invested in me, I'm here to take custody of Anna Harrow. She must return to her father's estate in Abilene until the validity of this marriage can be determined. John's voice was cold. You can't just tear her from her home. She's got a newborn, and this marriage is recognized by Preacher Jacobs. Crane's triumphant sneer widened. We'll see about that in Abilene's courthouse. Before John could argue further, Sheriff Taggart arrived with a small posse of deputies. Now hold on, Taggart said, glaring at the judge. This is an overreach of jurisdiction, Halverson. Willow Bend doesn't fall under Redwood Springs' direct authority. Halverson scoffed, but Taggart continued. If Anna wants to contest this, we'll settle it at the nearest legitimate circuit court. She has the right to due process, same as anyone. Crane's face twisted. We'll see how a circuit judge rules when he hears about your so-called wedding and about that child's questionable parentage. John lunged, but Taggart and a deputy held him back. Realizing a stalemate, the judge and Crane retreated, but not without promising they'd return. Pack your things, Crane hissed. We'll be back with more official backing. Desperate John took Anna aside that evening. We should leave, he insisted. This can't go on. If the Redwood Springs judge is corrupt, you'll never get a fair hearing. Tears welled in Anna's eyes. Where can we go with a newborn? It was Ms. Fletcher who offered a solution. Travel by night, cross the river, and head toward Fort Stockton. They have a bigger courthouse, more reputable judges. I have a cousin there, Lucy Farnsworth. She'll put you up if you mention my name. It was dangerous traveling with a newborn, but they saw no alternative. Under the cover of darkness, John, Anna, and their tiny son slipped away from Willow Bend. Ms. Fletcher gave them a heartfelt farewell, pressing a small wad of bills into John's hand. They rode slowly in a rented wagon. Daisy the mare pulled them across the moonlit desert, the baby swaddled securely in Anna's arms. After several hours, they approached a shallow crossing of the Rio Conchos. The plan was to follow the river until they reached a safer route leading to Fort Stockton. But destiny had one last twist. As they arrived at the riverbank, shadows emerged from behind the cottonwoods, Crane and his hired guns lying in wait. A violent confrontation erupted. Shots cracked through the stillness. John fired back with a borrowed rifle, narrowly missing one of the thugs. Anna crouched low in the wagon, shielding the baby with her body. Fear hammered in her chest as bullets whined overhead. In the chaos, John managed to knock one gunman off his horse with a well-aimed shot. The man yelped and toppled, landing with a thud. Crane, seeing the tide turn, ordered the retreat. But before leaving, he called out, "You're only postponing the inevitable. You'll never escape Gerald Harrow's reach." John, breathing hard, lowered his rifle. Anna scrambled to check on the baby, who miraculously hadn't been touched by the flying bullets. Relief and terror mingled in her eyes. "We have to keep going," John said, voice tight, "before they regroup." The wagon splashed into the river, forging its way across. It was treacherous, with the current swirling around the wheels. But at last, they emerged on the opposite bank, water dripping from the axles. Exhausted, shaken, but still together, they pressed on under the pale light of a waning moon. Within a day's ride, they reached the outskirts of Fort Stockton. True to her word, Ms. Fletcher's cousin, Lucy Farnsworth, took them in. She listened to their story with wide eyes and promised to arrange a meeting with the circuit judge, who served that region, a man reputed for fairness and disdain for bribery. The hearing took place in a cramped courtroom, but the judge, a stout man named Judge Abernathy, listened carefully to Anna's testimony. He examined the marriage certificate from Preacher Jacobs, took witness statements from Ms. Fletcher, submitted by letter, and notarized by Taggart himself, and reviewed the spurious Redwood Springs writ. In the end, Judge Abernathy declared the marriage valid. Anna Merrick was free from her father's guardianship, and Winston Crane's claims held no weight in his court. The sigh that escaped Anna was one of the purest relief she'd ever felt. Crane Cornered had no choice but to leave. The final blow to his cause came when John declared his intention to adopt the child officially. "He's my son in every way that matters," John said solemnly in court. The judge, impressed by John's earnestness, granted the petition without hesitation. And so beneath the scorching desert sun and the unyielding southwestern sky, John and Anna Merrick found what they sought all along: freedom, respect, and a chance to build a life for themselves and their little boy. They settled on the outskirts of Fort Stockton, renting a small adobe house with a pen for Daisy and a garden for vegetables. Anna's health flourished, free from the suffocating fear of her father's reach. John found honest work at the local ranches, and each evening he returned to a home filled with the quiet joy of a new family. In the end, the echoes of the fateful day by the riverbank still lingered like a distant memory. A quiet horseman who stumbled upon a pregnant woman, fainting by the water's edge, and changed both their lives forever with a single vow. Though forged in desperation, their union became something far greater, a bond unbreakable even by the frontier's hardest trials. They would never forget Willow Bend, Ms. Fletcher, Sheriff Taggart, or the dusty roads that led them to each other. And the child named Henry Merrick would grow up hearing the tale of how his mother was saved by a stranger's kindness, and how that man became the truest father he could ever know. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of a dusty frontier town where compassion outweighed fear and love conquered adversity. John Merrick's quiet heroism showed us that the Wild West was more than guns and outlaws. It was also a place of honor, sacrifice, and redemption. Anna's resilience reminds us that no matter how dire life may seem, there's always a thread of hope waiting to be woven into a new beginning. If you've been moved by this epic Western drama, by the courage of a lone horseman, and the determination of a woman who refused to lose her child, then please hit that like button, share this story with fellow Western enthusiasts, and subscribe to our channel for more adventures and heartfelt tales. Your support fuels our passion to keep telling stories that inspire, captivate, and remind us of the best in human nature. Thank you for watching.